Yes, you're still audible.
Okay, cool. Because the case building time is up before we open the round and start the debate, I would like to do a quick roll call again, but considering government just answered me and opposition just sent stuffs in the chat, so I hope that, and I think I assume everyone is complete. If one of your teammate is not complete or like went to the toilet or stuff, you guys just can unmute yourself, but and tell me. But so far, I still assume you guys are complete. I don't want to repeat the roll call. And then,
Sorry, Kak.
yeah.
One of my teammates should want to go to the toilet. Can we have like some
Yeah,
time?
okay.
Okay, thank you, Kak.
You can go to the toilet. While waiting for those speakers who want to go to the toilet and stuff, I would like to do a quick housekeeping. First, I would like to remind you guys to send your speaking order, which is you guys already done that. And number two, I would like you guys to also time yourself, because although I will help you guys with the timing, but I will only help you guys in the first 6 and 7 minutes. And yeah, it's better to avoid any technical issues. You guys also time yourself. And lastly, before starting your speech, each of you or like each of the speakers, please state your PI preference. Yeah. So I think those are all. Let's just wait for one of the government speaker to come back from the toilet. And yeah, ntar just inform me if you guys are all complete.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
I'm sorry, I don't think we can turn off the camera because we're facing some like signals problem. Like, is that okay?
If there is an urgency, I guess that's fine. Oh, and by the way, considering the committee has asked whether or not you guys consent to be live stream.
Yeah. We consent.
Government? Okay. Opposition, are you guys consent?
We consent, Kak.
Okay, cool. So all the speakers and all the debaters are consented. If the committee wants to start the recording, it's totally fine. Yeah. So starting the pre-quarter-final round of this competition, I'm calling upon the Prime Minister. Let's just directly open the debate.
Okay. PI preference, you can just unmute yourself. But please don't spam because it's going to like butter the flow of my speech. And gender pronoun she they. Starting my speech in 3, 2, One, we think that the current predominant narrative said that if you get a disease, if you're discriminated against, or if you face problems, have mental illness or whatnot, everything is a test from God under the assumption that you are 100% able to face it and able to conquer it because you are seen as strong. The religious leader always glorifies this narrative in the status quo, and this is also followed by the narrative that there will be a miracle from God if you patiently face your problem. Then there will be a miracle that God will save you and that God will solve your problem. Okay, so why then is this problematic? Firstly, we think that this is bad because everyone has different background and also mental stability. And if you force them to always be strong and patient, we think that this would be harmful. Secondly, we feel like this prevents people, for example, like minorities, to actually solve the root of the problem in the status quo, because the focus is not going to be on the problem, but the focus is going to be oh, this is just a test from God. And lastly, we think that this will invalidate other people's emotions by saying that you need to be more patient or whatnot because this is just a test, when in fact we think that your emotions also should be valid. In order to erase the stigma that you need to be 100% strong or to face everything, we believe that religious leaders should just leave this narrative behind, that difficulties are tested from God. Okay, what then will our world look like? Under our side, we want religious leaders to spread the narrative that every difficulties do not come from God and you don't need to 100% accept that. We want religious leaders to instead validate your feelings, and that if you're not strong and you're not able to face these difficulties, it doesn't mean that you cannot face the test from God. If you don't think that you're strong or enough, it doesn't mean that you're weak, and it's okay to sometimes feel down, because we feel like this religious leaders' role is also very crucial in these religious communities, because they're so influential and whatnot. Moving on to my argument, we have two today. Firstly, how this is going to harm people's ability to express their emotions. Moving on to my first layer, we're going to talk about how big religious impact is. Firstly, on a day-to-day basis, we feel like religion affects you in the way you dress, the way you think, the way you act, and the way you speak to people, and so much more. We think that especially in conservative areas, this way of thinking is especially common, and people often obey by these rules and so on. Secondly, talking about escapism, we think that religion gives you a sort of escapism from your worldly duties. It's an escapism for people because maybe they struggled with economical crisis, or in their education, or in just their day-to-day life. So religion is their safe place to get away from reality. Thirdly, talking about emotional satiety or emotional fulfillment. We think that emotional fulfillment or satiety is given by religion because for some people, especially underprivileged ones, if they cannot be financially fulfilled or materially fulfilled, they go to religion to make themselves feel better because religion is fulfilling their emotional or spiritual needs. Which is we think this is the benefit is exclusive in and of itself when you're in a religion. Okay, moving on to my second layer, how this is going to badly affect people. But I think that before moving on to that, we need to characterize a few characteristics of religious leaders. Firstly, we think that there's someone who is so powerful and influential in the religious community. Why is this so? Because they're seen as someone who has a personal connection to God, someone who is close to God, like a messenger of God or whatnot. And this is what makes them special because people see them as having this special connection to God himself. Secondly, because they're super influential, this makes them have a cult of personality who dedicate themselves to these leaders. We can call them lower loyal followers per se. They support these leaders every step of the way. They trust these leaders' judgment and trust. And the existence of these people are also really crucial for these religious leaders, but also for religion in general. Okay, so why is using this narrative would be harmful? Because firstly, we think that for people who are struggling, for example, let's say you're facing hardship in your life, you're kicked out of your home, you don't have a stable income or whatnot, then you go to these religious leaders, you want to ask for some guidance because you want to feel better. How would you feel when they just say, oh, it's a test from God? We think that this would be harmful because your emotions won't be validated and everything that you're going through is just because of God. Meanwhile, validating people's emotions are really important for their mental health. Secondly, we think that this narrative forces people to be strong. Even when you're not, you have to look like it. Why is this so? You have heard about terms like God gives his toughest battles to the strongest soldiers. We think that this is harmful because sometimes you have to admit that you're not always strong. You cannot always be strong, and that's okay. That should be validated. And thirdly, in terms of people who are struggling with mental health, this is going to be harmful for them as well. Because when they're struggling, for example, like they're depressed or suicidal or whatnot, it's going to get tiring to constantly hear people say, be patient, this is a test from God, and you're strong, especially when you hear this from like religious leader, the person that you look up to and the person that you look for guidance for. We think that this is going to push you further into that depressive episode. It's going to make your mental health worse because we're assuming that because of this, you don't go to psychologist or whatnot because you think that, oh, I'm going to be okay. God's test for me. And like, I'm going to move past this, and this would push them further into like their depressive episode and push them further away from the religion. Lastly, this is harmful if you keep blaming God for everything because you won't solve the root of the problem. For example, let's say in cases or like women that are being like assaulted or raped or whatnot, they experience severe emotional trauma, physical damage, they got pregnant and diseases or whatnot. How would they feel if they hear like this is a test of God and be patient when the problem is not God, it's the people that should be blamed, it's the people that assaulted this woman that you should be blamed. So we think that yeah, that's harmful. Moving on to my like second argument, how this is going to harm people's relationship and connectivity to God. We think that this narrative won't strengthen your beliefs, but rather push people away because firstly, your emotions are not going to be validated. Every concern that you have is not going to be the focus. The focus is just on God, that this is God's test. When the fact that your concerns are valid and you should be the focus as well. Secondly, when they're facing hardships, rather than going to God as your escapism, you're going to blame everything on God, especially when the hardship that you face is like nonstop. You're going to feel like, why is God not helping me? Why does God keep doing this to me? Am I not worthy? Like, why won't God help me? Lastly, especially when you hear this from a leader who is seen as a messenger of God, who is seen as someone who can give you guidance, like how would you feel if like your concern is not going to be validated, and when you're facing hardship, that everything is just like a test from God? And why is connectivity to God important? When you realize that God is like the one who sent you the problem, I don't think that you can make like God or religion your safe place anymore, because like when you're poor and you're done with all the tragedy that happened in your life and so on, you're going to be so mad because you feel like God is not helping you and your problem is like facing no end. So in the end, religion won't attract people, but rather push them away. But why is the interest of religion is to preserve their religion by gaining followers and whatnot. And we think that this narrative would instead push people away from religion, which is why we're proud to propose.
Okay, thank you so much for that speech. Now, to continue the debate, I call upon the leader of opposition. Here.
Hello, God, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Thank you. Just give me a second. Okay. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 3. Sorry about that. 3, 2. I would like to clarify that difficulties here are not lifelong problems, but these are things that are sudden. For example, things like, for example, your close ones dying, or you having like a problem with your health and stuff like that. And these are just things that are sudden, that are not planned. For example, what we think, telling people that this is a plan for God and you will have like something better in return because God is so glorified that it will, like, God will not harm you and stuff like that. Hence, it is something that are you like lifelong difficulties and stuff like that, right? But second, how will we do this narrative, and what does this narrative look like then? Within all life have hardships, and even if we don't have the narrative, hardship will still exist, right? This narrative is only another analogy to show how difficulties in life can be shaped as a mindset. But second, we think that every task has an end. This means that if we tell people that this is a task from God, this task will end after all, right? It won't last forever. And this narrative is never to break you down, but to tell you that you're given something from God and it will end soon. You have to try and face through it. And if you don't, it's still a task from God, right? But thirdly, then I would like to of arguments, right? These tests are not something that you are meant to pass, but moreover, passing a test is really arbitrary, right? The feeling whether you pass a test is really up to you. If you feel like you have passed this test, then you have passed it. It is not up to, like, for example, the religious leaders to tell you that, oh, you've passed this test, congratulations, you got 100 points, right? But secondly, then 1 point response, right? As others will be integrated in my argument. They told you that religion has a purpose for you as an escapism, for you to escape from reality and stuff like that, right? Exactly, when the purpose is that, we think that it's untrue under government that you will fulfill that purpose, right? Because people cannot escape whenever under your side you go to a religious leaders and ask, why are you having these difficulties? They will tell you that these difficulties may be your fault as well because you made a mistake, for example. It won't be a place for you to escape, especially when it's not a test from God. It's even way worse when you are supposed to have God as your emotional support, but under government, you cannot lean on God to help as your emotional support to get out of it, exactly when it is not coming from God, for example, right? But second, we think that government is very uncharitable in this debate by only playing in the scenario of the worst case, telling about minorities or harassment victims and stuff like that, right? But we'll engage to you on later. But we think that they still need to, like, engage on other scenarios, like normal people having like normal difficulties and not things that are that worst case, right? But going into my arguments, that I'll tell you on why this narrative aligns with the purpose of religion, along with the intention of religious leaders and their purpose in general, right? I think that first layer, talking about the purpose of religion, right? We told you that religion is a place of escapism, and we agree with that. We think that the reason why religion exists is back then when people have hard times, unlike the situation back then, they need a higher being that needs like their emotional support and as a moral compass, for example. They need someone to lean on during difficult time, and I'll tell you on where under our side we help this like purpose of religion for people to lean on the religion after all. But second, then I'll tell you on what is the purpose of religious leaders at the first place, right? Their target is not only to everyone, but mainly the religious like people and followers, right? Which means that when they are seen, exactly when they're seen as the closest to God, they're very influential, right? But first, we think that there's no intention for these religious leaders to abandon these narratives because these narratives incentivizes people to get closer to God, which is the opposite what PM told you, right? I'll prove to you why. Because first, under our side, it feels that God sees you as one of their people for you to be worthy enough for God to give you a test, right? For example, if you get a difficulty, you will see that, oh, God has given me a test. That means that I have a problem that I have to fix, for example, for myself. It checks as check and balance for you to look at yourself, for example, right? But second, we think that comparative to God, what will happen instead is what they have pushed to us, which is people will be detached from their religion, right? Because first, without this narrative, people won't have like a leaning, won't have something to lean on during difficulties. Also, because they don't feel like this test is from God, it is only from the people, for example, they won't have any correlation at all to their religion, for example, right? And this ends up on people feeling helpless since it's not a test from God, it's just a normal difficulties, for example. When there is not an actor like that to give them comfort that everything will end soon because it is a test from me, I am God, and things like that, right? Then they'll end up losing hope and eventually give it up. We think that this is very unpreferable, especially for religion or religious leaders themselves, which we think that they don't have any intention to abandon this narrative at the first place. But second, we think that religious leaders are not wizards that know everything to every of your difficulties. And looking at the high rate of people that go to religious leaders during their difficulties to seek for answers, and the government religious leaders know things, religious leaders won't have an answer. And we think that just by telling people that, oh, sabar, yeah, it's not the way out, right? Under our side, we tell the people that it is a test from God and it is okay, and they God has better time for you, for example, and they will have for example, you will pass through this, or if you're not, and it is okay, it's just a test from God, right? But second, within the exact one, religious leaders are seeing that close to God as God close to people and people. There's likely to people to believe exactly when there's that influential, right? But PM told you that these religious leaders will tell people that, oh, your tests are not from God, it is from the people, it is people's fault and stuff like that. Then we think that it fails the purpose of the religious leaders itself. Then what's the difference of you with, like, for example, your therapist, for example, or normal people that tells you that, oh, it is not your fault, it is the people's fault, and like it is not even a test from God, right? So then under our side, if you want to be seen as closest to God, you tell people that it is a test from God exactly when you know that it is a test from God. On your side, people will not think that you're even that close to God anymore as a religious leader, exactly when you're telling them that it is people's fault, right? But second, that this is a preemption of them telling us that it is the invalidation of feelings of the people, and we have to think about the mental health of the people, right? We think it is untrue under our side because this is being said by the religious leaders, which has different intentions for, compared to the intention of the people, which only wants to tell you that it is okay, everything will have a way out, right? Under our side, we told you that religious leaders have a purpose of helping you exactly when we are the closest to God, which is why we think that invalidation feelings are not true, right? Even if it is true, we think that like you still have a way, like you still can face it after all, right? But secondly, then talking about how religious, like talking about hope and like the sense of belief that we'll give to people, right? We think that religious leaders teaches religious followers when they are so unfaithful to the religion, their difficulties will give them something better in return. For example, God has better plans for you ahead. But then at first, this is very likely because God is always seen as a higher being, the only actor that keeps people fast. But then we're not forcing people to keep on going as well. If they want to slow down, we told you how people can also lean to God, which is very frontal.
Okay, thank you so much for that speech. Now, to continue the debate, I call upon the Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me set my timer. Okay. Majena pronunciation or her, please just unmute yourself if you want to do I, and I will take it if I have time, and please do not spam. Okay. I will start my speech in 1, 2, 3. I think it's very convenient for the head of the house to say that, oh, this is just a task, just when your family is that right. The opposition can just limit the analysis from under our set, and they just fail from the very first place. Few rebuttals before we move to the debate. First, they think about escapism of religion will be worse in your head of the house if you just continuously talking about the emotional place on, when the religious leader should have told you more explanation as a place for you to solve the problem. To respond to this, hey, let's compare to your head of the house. It is just an emotional comfort just for a while. Stop there. Maybe yes, you can drive people closer to God, but you will not drive people to actually solve their problem. Try to reform for the better. No, you just keep making them hopeless, and with that they're wrong. B. You also say that, oh, it's just not different from the therapist. Exactly, it's different. Therapist is a total stranger. Meanwhile, we told you in Rojita that leader is a cult of personality, place of comfort that give you more place to actually tell your problem and more connectivity with God, right? So that's why we think your problem will be more resolved if you feel comfort and safe, eventually work better in outside of the house if you're talking with a religious leader, people that you actually trust and believe. And then we don't see what kind of normal difficulties that you propose. No analysis at all, and we think that half of the house has failed about the normal difficulties analysis. And then when you face problems, you are going to feel worthy, strong, etc., like they say. Negation to this because A, we think that this is harmful because we think this is going to make you feel pressured, that you have to be strong and you should be able to go through it. When the fact that everyone is not always strong, and this task from God will pressure you even further. So this counterproductive to opposition claim about they want to make people to be strong. Lastly, when you give people hope, that's what their problem is going to end. It's a task from God. You're giving them false hopes, and there's never a guarantee that your problem is going to answer. Therefore, the side of the house has failed. And then let's move to my argument. I have two arguments for today. Why this narrative is harmful to individuals, and why is it problematic to the community inside the religion, right? Why this narrative will harm the individuals? Bring the comparison in the side of the house in order to talk about which side of the house can create a better place for the individuals. Hey, their side of the house probably going to glorify about why this narrative is a safe net to everybody and every member of the religion, because maybe if you suffer, if you feel down, you feel like, oh, okay, God still accompanies me, and still feel a glimpse of hope in your life. Like the manifestation here is maybe a person who has got 20 years date that will feel like, oh, okay, everything is okay because it just comes from God. When in reality, it's not at all. What will your world look like if you just go into prolong the suffering of these people when you just rely on that narrative? Because let's characterize what kind of people that are being affected from the sermon of a religious leader. People who rely on religion are mostly minorities that face so many hardships in life that they want to believe in God as their base life, the path of their life, so on and so forth. What kind of minorities, like black people, poor people, so on and so forth, they face enough hardship, and it would be more cruel for you to make them hide behind the narrative. And why most likely they will just put on their belief and reliance to the narrative, oh, it is from God, yada yada. Under your world, you will make these people trust as it is as a whole because mostly vulnerable people or minorities are most likely irrational. Why? Three folds of explanation. First, they are constantly facing hardships, discrimination, difficulties, which make them more stressed. They have worked for 18 hours per day, and at the end of the day, they will have to run to life because they feel like there is no way of out. For like a black people, you keep being pressured in society, right? So later on, they will make religion as their sort of escapism, which in the end will make them feel safe, right? See, that mostly it is a religious leader that accepts them as a person. So that's why all the narratives that religious leaders have spoken will be accepted without being disgusted, hence make them more and more dependent on the narrative. That later on they will fail in solving the core of their problems. In your side, these people will become more and more irrational and vulnerable. So that's why we tell you, even if these people or this religious leader seen as a therapist, it's okay because they will feel comfortable for them. And you say therapist, they cannot afford therapists right in their house. So that's why we need this religious leader to actually help them solve the problem. And then second, when they always get discrimination and you only rely on the narrative that God sent you everything, you will see the God as double standard. Why they protect white people, that will always give discrimination to black people, so on. At the end, the problem cannot be solved, right? And then even if you say, oh no, this narrative will push them to be more enthusiastic in life, like okay, it's just a pass from God, so on and so forth. This will still be more problematic because the moment you cannot conquer that, you will feel that God is too evil, right? The thing is, you will not focus on the realistic thing that makes you suffer, right? No, they cannot protect these minorities. And then let's compare under outside the house where we will actually protect these individuals better. First, simply because we make these individuals to focus on the root of the problem, not behind the narrative of God is just giving you a task, so on and so forth. So that's why they will most likely go to the psychologist if they are suffering, for example, or they will pay the debts if they get chased by the debt collectors, or women who are raped will fight for the justice to the court, so on and so forth. Maybe under both sides they can be happen, but we think outside and outside will be more effective in handling it because we actually not giving them false hopes. We actually told them that, oh, this problem is A, not B. It's not just from God, but it's actually something that's going on inside yourself, and will give a more better escapism, right? And then second, why is it, then let's move to second argument. Why is it bad for the community of religions? We see that the connection with God is really important in the portrayal of religion, right? It is important once you want to have a good relationship with God. But despite that, there's a connection with others as a community inside the religion. We tell you why this is going to bad for the connection inside the religion itself. Let's talk about why is it bad for the religious leader itself. This narrative will just harm the people that are, for instance, interested in the religions. Let's talk about the interest of religious leaders. Which one of them is gaining followers, right? And why are the followers is important? Because without followers, mean that the religion will become ancient, right? And we want to preserve the religions. And without any followers, you cannot actually preserve the religion. And what kind of people that most likely have to join the followers? Like A, they're atheists. They're atheists. That what make people atheists because they are realistic and simply doesn't want to believe in God. And B, they are moderate people that half believe and half not. These two categories are important to gain the religions. We can say in the current status quo, the narrative of religion has been very quiet and realistic seen by these atheists and moderate people because they think that religion is just a fantasy imagination, so on and so forth, when it's not right. And one of the reasons people see it as something irrational is because of this narrative that everything is just a task from God. Like for them, the problem is not from God. And why would you put all the blame to God? They will actually want to see something realistic. That's why in the future extent, there's at the house, you will only push away these moderate people that in the first have quite interest in religion to be completely not interested there. You will actually push all of the atheist people to be more actually invested to your religion because of this narrative that is so much unrealistic for this of the house. So that's why we think it's very important. And then secondly, and what happens if the religious leader fail to gain more people in their religion? Their second speaker said about, oh, this narrative will actually drive people closer to God because it's just a task, yada yada. No, this will not happen at all because my first speaker already countered this argument by saying that God is a cult of personality, right? So even if you drive people close to God, they will actually not understand the root of the problem, and at the end, the religious leader will be fail to gain people to religion, and then at the end, the religion will be seen as bad, right? So therefore, our side of the house is propose your case and how we can actually ensure the safety of minorities and ensure the safety of the religious leaders also. Very proud to propose. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that speech. Now, to respond to that case, I call upon Deputy Leader of Opposition. Here.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, give me a second, thank you. General pronounce him, and if any of you are open in chat, please, thank you. And if my voice is breaking up, please do let me know. Gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I don't think that government at the house is being charitable in their characterization and on all of their whole case, right? Because I don't think God is talking about religion, because when God is talking about the entirety of irrationality and realistic things under that of the house, I don't think this match up with the characterization of a religion, right? I don't think that this match up with how the religion is supposed to work and why then people lean onto the religion in the first place. Yeah, we sure know that if we are going to get assaulted, that we have to go on for the justice, we have to fight back. But rather, I think that the problem here is that sometimes we all know the things that we should have done for, but we don't have the enough mental support, or we don't actually have the enough energy to fight for it in the first place. This is why we think that we need religion, we need something, a concept of mentality that should be better, which is the participation of God in itself as itself. Because if government is trying to oppose it, if government is trying to be telling you that they have to be realistic, then might as well go to psychiatrists. Why do we have to go and comply to the God? Because under the government have to realize that religious leaders and the religion still exist. Then why is it within the interest of religious leaders, or even the purpose of religious leaders from the first place, to contradict every single value, to become realistic and to offense or to oppose all that exists in the kitab of the values that based on irrationality that government have said on frame before, right? I don't think that God is talking about the religion. They have to change all of their stance under their side. But your responses stand under their side, right? I think that there are several things the government is missing under their side. First, I think how can set you a government explain difficulties under their side comparatively, right? Because I think in substantial level, in the principle level, there is no explanation why difficulty exists or for you from the first place, right? But rather, not every single problem or not any single difficulties can be proven or can be reasoned scientifically under the how. Why would people suddenly assault you for example, as a woman out of thousands of people that exist in the world? Why you are the one who get assaulted, or why that difficulty are being bestowed upon you and your own self in the first place? But rather, I think furthermore, in second point, right, even if this is the case, and this is the example scenario that government is trying to say to you, I don't think that CGS doesn't exist on the out of the house, right? Whether it's about the religion, whether narrative exists or not, those people are getting persecuted anyway. These people are going to get to fight for the justice anyway under out of the house. This concept is not whether for you to agent you for every single decision that you have to make from the first place, but rather to give you the mental support, but to give you the mentality that you should for by giving you more power to able to fight for from the first place to begin with. I don't think those kind of doesn't mean that we are going to blame upon every single God. That means we are just going to give up and do everything by the God. Because even if it is the God fan, whether it's a God fan is a God fan or not, we have to do our own agency. This is our life. We have to do it practically with our action instead, because that's not irrational at all under their side. But lastly, I think if any, religion become way more problematic, right? Because when you transfer all the burden and the reason of validation of difficulty to the individual, then what government is trying to say to you is that all the problem, all the root, all the problem of your difficulty is on you instead. It's all on your emotion and it's all on your agency anyway, because you are the root of your problem. Difficulty exists because on your own mistake. Exactly when emotion is validated under your heart, that means it's your fault anyway, right? It's your brain root of the problem. Comparatively, I think what we are trying to say here, that it's not, I think that when government, when we are trying to say that some part of your difficulty is some part of the government that are inherently a good actor from the first place. If they are a bad sense, that magically they are that are doing the magic, for example, then the concept of difficulties are not always on your own self. It's not always depend on your own emotion, but rather there are certain difficulties that cannot be explained, for example, and not every single thing should be based upon your own mistakes from the first place to begin with. I think not on yourself or your own, but rather, I think whether it's under the God or not, you still have to go through to the process of your own self, your own choice. If any, I think validation become better under us the house. But second of all, I think we want to thread off in our validation, right? I don't think that validation is even a good metric. Because if any, when we are invalidating them, then okay, because these difficulties are not meant for competition, it's not meant for to give you the validation you need to on the first place to begin with. When the problems already that detrimental, when problems are that pressure, I think the government cannot just say to you that we need validation, if we want to get any validation from the society, by telling to the people that we are at that strong and we can be the perfect being to solve any problem controllably under us at the house, to conquer any problem. If any, the problem and the harm of validation become even worse under the rest of the house because government at the house demand validation under their side. Right? And if you are not going to be able to solve your problem correctly under your side, how would you get that validation under your side? But second, I think in extension then, why we give a better mental support under us at the house, right? First, I think standing from my LO, if a difficulties are being made by the God, it means God's religious leaders and your fellow religious leaders will participate in accompanying you in going through every process of the difficulties. And then I think that this irrationality and this concept of something at a higher being, that something difficulties are not meant for you to be explained scientifically, is what we need in this kind of scenario. Because in comparative, by you abandoning this narrative, it depends on you when you depend too much on your own self. I think one of the most cases difficulties are been seen as a part of the sin or basically the unfairness of their life. I think the concept of harm that they are trying to push under us the house completely also exists under the rest of the house because they simply cannot explain under the religion why then difficulties exist, why then the problem that exists under us the house, why they are rather than our own sense and our own agency. But second of all, I think when difficulties exist with our narrative, we will think that every problem and difficulties are not exist because on your own fault and your own control, we give a better learning mechanism for you to go through any process that does have a better plan, that is doing the magic and doing the things that you don't know, but actually giving a good intention to the day. I think gives you less pressure to find the mistake that doesn't even come from your own stuff. This is important because most of the time you know what you do. You know that you want to fight for your justice. You know that you have to become you have to become good in order for you to win competition, for example. But that doesn't mean that you can do it. That you are brave enough to do it from the first place to begin with, right? Comparatively, under our characterization of difficulties, we are giving you way more learning mechanism or better religion under our house. We accept that irrationality, we accept that kind of subjectivity because that is what meant for religion. This is why people lean on the religion from the first place. We don't see it as a harm. We don't oppose that because religion are supposed to go that way anyway. I think when you can't find it, when you cannot find the realistic and practicality of suffering, you can lean on principles. You can lean on what fantasy that government is trying to you, right? But rather, in worst case scenario, you don't have to prove to you why this kind of analysis can be proven scientifically, as long as the religious leaders can influence you to tell you that you will become better, that God have their own plan. It's already enough. It already gives you enough reason on why you have to go through the process and not rather than pressurizing it. We have to oppose.
Okay, thank you so much for that very fine speech. Now I call upon the government whip here.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Well, gender pronouns they them. If you want to be I, just put it on the chat box. Okay. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. 3 clarifications that I need to be clarified in this debate. Firstly, we think our characterization is charitable, ladies and gentlemen. Look, if you're talking about moderate people and okay people at the end of the day and rational people, that you don't touch the most vulnerable people at the end of the day in this debate, right? As people that have the lowest condition of their mentality, for example, that we need to be protected in the very first place. They are the one that do not care about this kind of people in the very first place. But secondly, we think that their narrative is counterproductive when they want to make people feel strong because of this narrative, because they're going to feel worthy or whatnot. Don't you think that when we push this narrative, it's going to pressure people even more because they feel that this pressure to be strong, since God gives the toughest battle in your life, for example, this narrative will force you to conceal with your emotion and be strong when a lot of people do not can done it at the end of the day. But thirdly, religion would be more problematic under your side, because don't you think that every hardship that people face because of God and everything that you're facing is God, even if your problem stops, it doesn't make it any better. You still went through a lot of hardship during the time that God didn't help you, and etc. I have two clashes that you need to note in this debate. Firstly, which side is better to protect the individual, but secondly, which side is better to gain more followers and make people close to God. First clash is that which side is better to protect the individual. I have three observation here. First observation, they say that under our side, they co-op under their side, they co-op all of the escapism that we are trying to give in this debate, and they say that this narrative also can create an escapism and etc. I have two responses of this. Look, escapism is the way you gotta place that is comfortable. We told you, rather than you becoming comfortable, you will be so unstable mentally. When your mom die, for example, then your priest said that it is the test from God and you need to be strong. Really, how can you be comfortable when you forced to not cry in their burial, for example, by this narrative? Opposition cannot say that this religious leader is so angel, because the manifestation in the real life in the status quo is they're being so careless by saying, oh, you need to be strong and you don't need to be cry because this is all the test from God and you strong to face it. But secondly, even if yes, they are comfortable, I don't think that this is good, because this will be toxic things. The moment you feel that you are strong, it's just imaginary emotion, because the narrative affect your mind when you do not realize about that. By saying that this problem is come from God and you don't have any power to change or stop it or prevent it, you will less likely to prevent what might be happen in the future. You're less likely to search for a new job when you have less salary, saving for money for the future when you are poor people, because they believe that this is something that under their control, out of their control, and at the end of the day, they're already comfortable under sufferness at the end of the day. Second observation, they say that under our side, they know that the difficulties that do not come from God, then people will be so stressed and etc. because it's coming from the other people. I have three responses. Firstly, no, it will be more painful because you believe that God is the only thing that you rely on. But look, it gives you a lot of problem right now, rather than give you belief that you are strong, because they say that, oh, you are strong and etc. You will questioning what's wrong with you. You will blame yourself because you believe that it's not because the other things, but it comes from inside of you at the end of the day. It's you, because you becoming you at the end of the day. But second responsive, even if that they say that people will be able to help us help from God, for example, this is also not exclusive. God will who told you that your story is different and etc. Know that the problem is not coming from God and etc. Realize, yeah, that people have different point of view from God. They always that they not always say that God is always good and etc. And people will see God as the evil at the end of the day. But third one, we're saying that these people is the root of the problem. But rather than we're saying that they should solve the root of the problem, they are never engaged this case by explain to us how you can still solve the problem under their side of the house when there is still a narrative that's predominant. But third observation, they say that religious leaders have the intention to help you through this narrative will be used to face all of the problem in the status quo. The manifestation of the narrative in the status quo in the real life is the religious leader ask you to ask from help from God rather than search for the roots of the problem. When under our side, the religious leader will ask for the search of the root of the problem, and the premise if everything is not coming from God, so at the end of the day, you need to solve the roots of the problem. They failed to prove one thing in this clash, since they only play in the base case scenario when the difficulties only, oh, your family die, etc. They need to prove the main cases when irrational people accept this narrative, why then they are able to accept it wisely at the end of the day under your self-doubt. We believe what these people need is to safe place when they can share their story without judgment, people that always hurt them, and also without demonizing all of your ungratefulness, because you will say, oh, you are less grateful. Go to Salat because everything is come from God, and the end of the day, God the only one that can solve it, but God do not come anyway. What we told you then? We told you that the minorities will be demonized because the vast majority of white just easy to hands off, because the Christianity always said, this kind of people is already strong enough. You do not need to help them. And at the end of the day, second clashes, which side is better to gain more followers? They say that people will be so honored that God gives you test and etc. How can you be honored when your mom died rather than of cancer, but because God want to teach you or want to test you at the end of the day, you will question in why then God always be take all the beloved one from you and etc. But secondly, okay, even if that they are honored, the question is this honored feeling is also toxic. When you are unstable economic or in the racism condition, rather than you solve the problem, you will say that, yeah, that's totally okay. God believes that I am good enough and also strong enough, then I need to accept it at the end of the day as at the end of the day because I follow God. They fail to prove in these classes why then these people that really said want to come to the religion when they always be demonized and also say that this is also coming from God and etc. What we told you then? We told you that the moment these narratives exist, people that always have psychological problems that are stressful in life, in the capitalistic world, you have less income and salary, you will wait for the miracle and wait for God to have to save you and etc. Because you believe you are strong and etc. At the end of the day, they are struggling in the long term. They do not have the connection to God and leave the religion anyway because they see that God do not come to solve your problem. God do not come to make you rich anymore. And at the end of the day, the suffer is the long run. You will question him, where is God at the end of the day in this kind of place? Or in the worst case, you demonize the existence of the religion that should be safe place for everyone, but you say that religion only a toxic place when you cannot be improved at the end of the day. We proudly to propose.
Okay, thank you so much for that very fine speech. Now, I call upon the opposition whip here.
Check, I'm audible.
Yes, you're audible.
If you have preference at the 4th to 5th minute mark, you can just unmute yourself. But if it's not within the time limit yet, you can just do it through chat. You can refer to me as the opposition whip of this debate, no specific pronouns. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Proposition's counter-narrative in this debate has been very vague and inexclusive in this debate, right? Because firstly, if you want to just need to acknowledge your feelings, then you can just shift it somewhere else, right? People will still have a social life and they can still vent about it to their friends or family, right? So what is exactly the exclusivity here? You can get under proposition, zero-sum game. If anything, proposition just loses the exact exclusivity that exists in religious leaders, right? Because the only reason why religious leaders are seen as an important figure in the very first place is because they have relation to God, right? But that doesn't exist anymore exactly because they just become the normal person in society where their comfort and responses are just a copy paste of everyone else's, right? So why should people find comfort to religious leaders when they are not able to answer their biggest question in life? But secondly then, the question then becomes, how can people under opposition still remain hopeful throughout the entire difficulties, right? Because if the situation is that bad to begin with, then you're just going to leave these people to suffer even more, right? Because how does saying that, quote unquote, I understand you, I understand your entire feelings, solve or even comfort these people to begin with when everyone else in society has said the same thing, right? Comparatively under opposition, right, we are able to give them the answer that they want to hear because we told them that it's a test from God, meaning that firstly, knowing how God is a good actor in both sides of the house, it means that individuals will be benefited from the end result because God has good intention. But secondly, then it provides hope for the people that in fact the issue will come to an end someday later on, right? And it will because difficulty doesn't last forever. But thirdly, then notice the idea of quote unquote passing the task is arbitrary to begin with, meaning that the only person who can tell whether or not these people have passed or failed the task is solely dependent on the individuals themselves, right? Hence, even if they fail, we don't think anybody will tell them that, oh, you have failed God whatsoever, right? And even if they do fail, we think it's okay because at the end of the day, God will still be there to accept them, right? Exactly because you have tried to go through the test, then it's enough for God. We have never told you that God will demand you to pass the test. this is a strawman coming from proposition. But secondly, then notice how God's existence in religion will also be questioned under their side of the house, right? Because it just proves to you further as well that God is not that powerful or influential to begin with, right? Exactly because they cannot control or even decide your fate. So what is even the point of believing in God? Because even they cannot help you, right? This further weakens religion's influence in society because people will still face difficulties anyways, and there's no exact concrete solution you can get from religion. Exactly because even the Pope will just say yes, you are facing difficulties and do nothing else to help you, right? And even if they told you that, oh, people will hate God under out of the house, two responses, right? Firstly, this won't happen considering that there is already a glorification of God in such school right now, and there are already exist deep-rooted faith towards God that have existed from centuries ago. We don't think that people will suddenly come to like discriminate or even hate God to begin with, exactly because they have already a strong faith, right? But secondly, then, even if in the worst case scenario they do, we think it's fine, right? Because firstly, the issue was never on the narrative that it was God's to begin with, but on the people themselves for not being as faithful to God to begin with, right? Hence, the harm is entirely inexclusive because if people are unfaithful to God, then they will also be unfaithful under years of the house. It's a zero-sum game. But secondly, then, if anything, at the very least, it becomes even worse under the years of the house, right? Because people don't even see an intention to stick religiously anymore if they have any difficulties or even issues, exactly because they cannot provide them any blessing or prophecy that, oh, the issue will end because it is blessed from God. God wants the best for you, right? But comparatively, at the very least, under out of the house, the delta then becomes we give hope for these people, right? We tell them it's a blessed from God, and it will obviously eventually come to an end, right? God wouldn't be so mean to you in the very first place, and they will still give you salvation. Hence, that's the end of the discussion. So moving on then, first class, hope. Three premise of proposition told you, right? Firstly, they told you that the narrative can solve the problem, for example, minorities, poor people whatsoever, right? Three responses. Firstly, obviously they won't solve the problem because problem exists symmetrically under both worlds, right? So we don't insist on people to solve their own issue. It's just mutually exclusive because people under proposition won't still be able to solve the problem either way. Hence, proposition push an unfair burden because what we have yet for you in this debate was never about solving the issue, but instead giving hope to these people in the hopes that they can solve the issue, and even if they don't, it's fine, right? But secondly, then the delta then becomes firstly under after the house, we give them incentive and motivation to solve the problem, right? Because they know that God is watching over them and are there for them if even during these difficult times, right? God is still helping you and still looking over you. There exists then a high likelihood for individuals to overcome the difficulties, exactly because firstly they have the hope. They know that the difficulties will end either way, and they are able to do so exactly because it is task from God, right? It's not a task from anyone else, and exactly because it's God. God has good intention. God will help you. God will then help like finish the issue sooner or later. But comparatively under proposition, right? Individuals have a hard time to move on because even if in the best case scenario they get support, we don't think this is entirely viable in this debate, right? But before moving on, is there any POIs? First, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because even if in proposition best case scenario they get the support they needed from the entire religious leaders, two reasons why it is not worth of the trade-off. Firstly, notice how it's entirely inexclusive, right? Because under out of the house as well, not only will you get support from religious leaders, but also fellow followers, right? Because whereas they wish to support you when going through difficult times, exactly because they have also gone through God's path and they know how it feels like, and it is within their interest to recruit more faithful followers as well, so they will always be there to help you. Hence, even if you go through difficult times under out of the house, there will be way more people who help you comparatively than under proposition, right? But secondly, then under the out of the house, you have zero attachment from religion itself, but not only that, you don't have any hope to begin with, right? Because the only thing that these religious leaders do is acknowledging you, but then what? What will they do to help you, right? What will they do to actually comfort you? Because even if they tell you that, oh, I understand your issue, everyone else says the same thing, so what exactly do you have in religion? Zero-sum game. But secondly, then they told you that, oh, the narrative forces people to be strong. One response: this is completely untrue, right? Because we have told you yet again, the religious leaders' interest is to help these people because they want to recruit more followers, right? So firstly, no, they won't just tell you to toughen up and go through the test, but instead they will try to help you pass through the test exactly because they want you to believe in God and they want you to also be a faithful follower, right? But secondly, then comparatively on the proposition, right? What is even the safe space that they are talking about in the entire debate, right? Because it proves that even religion or even religious leaders themselves don't know why these people are facing the exact difficulties, right? So what exactly are these religions even for in the very first place, right? Because yet again, we have told you religious leaders will only be bystanders and like everyone else in society who will only tokenistically say that, oh, we understand you, but absolutely do nothing about it. This is the biggest burden proposition never answered in the debate. But thirdly, then they told you that, oh, under the of the house, rather than blaming God, people will blame other people for the difficulties, right? But one response: firstly, this is entirely not inclusive, right? Because it will only apply side in the case where you are the victim in the scenario in the difficulty, right? But what if you are dying from sickness? What if there is no one to blame? Then who can you exactly blame in this scenario, right? At the end of the day, under proposition, people will have zero help and blame themselves instead because they got no answers and they don't know why exactly are they the ones out of millions of people in this world who are suffering, right? And exactly because of that, they will think that, oh, maybe I am the problem and that is why I'm being punished right now. But comparatively under our side of the house, right, people know that no one is to blame exactly because this is just another test from God, right? This is just another test and it will pass sooner or later. Hence, on the out of the house, at the very least, firstly, we fulfill the religious leaders' purpose in the very first place, where they give you hope and they give you the purpose in the very first place. But secondly, then we also give hope to these religious followers or anyone else in general that God is there with them and they are able to help you sooner or later to pass the difficulty. Hence, we are so proud to oppose.
Okay, thank you so much for that speech. Now to conclude the case of team opposition, I call upon opposition reply. Here.
Kak, not audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Thank you. I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1. Religion is meant to be philosophical, not realistic. We don't think government is talking about religion, they're just talking about human beings in general. They've walked into the wrong direction of the debate from the very start. Even if people who give you the idea of, I know how you feel, I understand you, it's not your fault, it's the people's fault, go to a therapist. Because I don't think there's any correlation then to God and the religion itself if the narrative does not even talk about God. This is an analysis that gives a huge hole on government's case, how people can suddenly be more attached to God when they won't even be seeking like comfort and leaning to God, right? I'll tell you on why we win on one tipping point. On the purpose of religion, which is on emotional support. What is government to do? Government is talking as if religion is a police station or the law of the court, and suddenly it's meant to solve every problem you have. It is not meant to be solving every problem that you have. It serves you as an emotional support to go through that problem, something government cannot give to people since the correlation to God is nowhere to be found. Because I don't think religious leaders know every answer to your problems, right? Hence, under government, religious leaders won't even, it's not even capable of giving you an answer. Under our side, it's better because we tell them that it's a task from God. What happens then under government? First, no matter how much government tries to defend their one-sided uncharitable case, talking about minorities and where there's victims, they still cannot run in this debate. Sure, if you're harassed, you can blame the perpetrator, you can put them in a jail. But if your closest one dies, for example, or you're sick, then who are you blaming under government, right? Are you, as a religious leader, will tell the people that it's your fault that they died. It's your fault that you're sick, right? People suffer even more exactly when they don't know the answer to their difficulties. You as a religious leaders can't even tell them that what is the problem and what should they do at that time, right? Ending up blaming themselves, ending up people will only blame themselves, them thinking that, oh, I do deserve this suffering because God is making me go through this because I deserve this, I'm suffering, right? But second, it's funny how they're telling you that they can solve the problems under their side, right? How then? By telling the people it's not the God's fault, so go find a therapist, so go find the law, right? Then where's God under government, right? Where's the purpose on the religion after all under government, right? This detaches people even more from God under your side because because the point of this debate is on which side, which make people more closest to God. Exactly when it's talking about a religious leaders and its purpose, right? The second, comparatively, what we told you, moral support. It's never within the religious leaders' responsibility at the first place to solve the crime case that happened upon you. To for example, to solve your harassment issue, for example, right? Or to find someone to blame after you fell sick, for example. We're here to give them emotional support, telling them that God is here for you. God is walking this road of difficulty for you, with you. This is only exclusive under our side for people to have strong, hope and strength to even find an answer to their difficulty, for example, or to find a way out, or to be strong enough to just face the problem, right? But what did we do under our set too, right? First, we're even charitable enough for you to engage with their case on minorities and harassment victims where they're so vulnerable, right? The CGS still exists, telling them that the God is under our side. We telling them that it's only a God step when suddenly erase every memory about justice and law and that it doesn't exist, right? under us, that people can still look for justice after being told that it's a task from God, right? Comparatively, under the proposition, the difficulties will still be the same. Minorities will be suffering, and we think that there's zero exclusive benefit under their side, right? So lastly, then I think it's even better under our side, exactly when they're suffering so much due to the harassment under this case, they won't give up, right? God is here with you. The test will end soon, exactly when it's a test, and God is so glorified being. They won't give let you suffer for so long, right? They will under their side, they won't be even strong enough to face the problem. Then where are they leaning to under proposition, right? Since we think that under our side, talking about people's faith, talking about the purpose of religion, talking about how people faces their own problems, our side wins this debate. So proud to oppose.
Okay, thank you so much for that reply. Now, to end the entire debate, I call upon the government reply here.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me set my timer first. Okay, I will start my speech in 1, 2, and 3. I think South opposition held their own case the moment that they say that they're going to say what the people want to hear and how they're going to give hope. Don't you think it's harmful to say what they want to hear instead of what they should hear, please? Be realistic for once. At least even if it hurts, we are not giving them false hopes. That's not every problem is going to end quickly just because God is testing you. Answering their claim, they say that you are going to feel unfair and that you are going to be the one who punished there are thousands of people in this world. But let's use their logic, right? Then you think this is going to be the worst for them, that when you are being punished, that because God is doing to you symmetrically, all because of God. And like, why was I born in this situation? Why did God this to me but not other people? Therefore, our side winning this debate. This debate has been very interesting and generous because both sides of the house have the same aim, which is to make the religious members of people to feel more safe and able to experience the connection of God. But again, we think the proposition win into this debate because their side has failed to engage on our biggest case about the safety of minorities. Therefore, choose our side. We will talk about 3 different points of views that exist in this debate. First, the effect of narrative test from God. Second, problem solving. Third, mental support. Let's draw in the line of the first main case, which is the narrative test from God. The opposition has provided 3 things. First, a test from God can actually drive you closer to God, right? We think that this narrative is counterproductive to what the opposition wants. When you have the narrative that God gives his strongest battle to their soldiers, to their strongest soldiers, this is going to pressure you even more. You're going to feel like you have to be strong because God tells you so, when the fact they are not always going to be strong. And then second, under our side, we won in the case of emotional support because it's not enough for you to see yourself in the house by saying that, oh, it's just a test from God for you. Then how you can actually help their mentality just hiding behind the narrative, when under your side, we can assist you more than that. To see the problem is more than just a test from God. They never give us an analysis under their side. How is these people don't overcome these difficulties? How it is going to be fine? It's not enough for the third speaker to say that it's fine without giving us any analysis. And then second, about the problem solving, exactly without being broken down, the government side in this clash have because two reasons. First, let's have the house talks about how is the religious leader will be seen as a therapist on so forth. Actually, thank you for saying this because exactly this is what we want to make the religious leader to be actually. For example, not a literal therapist, but as a person they rely to help and resolve the problem. The speakers of government has actually succeeded in tackling the opposition case by saying that A, the religious leader is the person they believe and trust. Second, they are comfortable to tell a story because they believe that the religious leader is the person that's a spokesperson of God, for instance, which at the end they will actually have the urge to finish the root of the problem they see. Like for women who are raped, they will go to court or a doctor and just being said it's just a test from God. Second, maybe on their side of the house, they can be succeed by actually saying that, well, they will driven closer to God because they will make lean to God in terms of safety and so on. But don't you think that this narrative will be more succeeded under our side of the house? The government has failed to answer our case about the opposition has failed to answer our case about how God will never come at the end of the day. Because at the end, under the of the house, you will only treat your God as a whole the problem, which this has been countered by our first speaker. Like they are being assumptive by saying that everyone is the root of their own problem, when that's not what we meant in the first place. Yes, that might be true, but not necessarily. We are saying that we are solving the problem, not make them suffer even more. Meanwhile, the set never gave us an analysis about how they can finish this. And then there's like talking about the normal difficulties, which again they have failed to address. I don't see what kind of difficulties they address when they try to engage our case about the woman assault and rape. No, we debate is whether or not who are being chosen to face difficulties. Okay. And then in the point of hit target, we win because first we give you analyze that the most irrational people is the one that we need to protect because they're irrational. You can say that God gives you test on support. Second, we also told you in the third speaker in the most common suffer such as losing your family also can be helped by this narrative because you believe that God take your parents just because to test you and you will blame yourself. That we win in gaining support because the moment is not personal test. You don't need to face it alone, and that's why we told you in BLM we will work against the vast majority of white people. And the opposition failed to prove to you the moment they say that the judgment whether or not you are success to the price is standard, as I said, it comes from God, not from individual. Why are these people able to rationally think that they are success to pass all of the tests when they are in the mental illness isn't clear under the side? And then when they say that people who will get support from the other followers, it is too assumptive to be taken. They also need to think why people will have the other people when you believe that all the problem is of God, and you should not go against that. So for that, we are never be prouder to the proposition side of the house. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that fine speech. Now, by the end of that speech, it also marks the end of the debate. Congratulations and appreciation for all of you to have finished this pre-quarterfinal round. Because this is a silent round and the result will be announced in the main hall. Please go back to the main hall. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone. You guys can have fun.